Good morning, everybody. My name is Trine Christiansen, and I'm here this morning to speak to you about a piece of work we're doing that we call the State of Water and the Need for a More Resilient Europe. Before I go into the presentation, I would just like to thank you very much for inviting me to your event. And I would also like to apologize for not being able to be with you in person. I really would have liked to attend this meeting. I have not been to Ireland before, and I'm sure you're going to cover a lot of topics that are also of my interest. However, going into the presentation, so the first thing I'd like to spend a little bit of time on is why is this actually a topic we're interested in? And water pollution is an important topic. And if we talk about pollution in general, there is quite a lot of evidence that around 10% of premature deaths in Europe are directly linked to pollution, both water, air, and noise. And also that there's very uneven exposure to this. People poorer parts of the population are more likely to be exposed. Also, there's quite a lot of chemical exposure in the environment. Here, I've chosen the example of a chemical called bisphenol A, which is an endocrine disrupting substance. And as you can see in the statistics here, it's actually present above safe guideline levels in a very large portion of the population around Europe. And finally, a very large number of premature deaths are linked in the European Union are linked to air pollution. We can also zoom out and think about this from a different dimension. Nature, and this also includes water, gives us a large number of ecosystem services for free, so things that we do not need to pay for. The value of pollination alone has been calculated to 15 billion euros, but actually this value might be even higher because, as we all know, without pollination, we do not have agricultural outputs. And we can zoom out even further and think about this from a global level. And one of the things we've done at the EEA is we've looked at where we are in the context of the environmental limits of the planet. And it turns out the more we look, and every time we look, we are exceeding more and more of these boundaries. So basically, we're not living within the sustainable limits of the planet. And of course, because Europe is a major global economy, we have part of this is also our responsibility. Finally, and I think we all are aware that we're in a context of climate change. Temperature is rising, it's projected to continue to increase. But what is perhaps not so well known is that Europe is the fastest warming continent on Earth. And if we're not doing something, we are putting ourselves on the trajectory of a 7-degree increase at the end of this century, where we have already reached the 1.5-degree target. So this means that we are in a context of what we call the triple crisis. We have biodiversity, pollution, and climate change all coming together, impacting the foundation of our lives and impacting us as people, with increasing challenges for all of us, how to manage the consequences of this. Now, going back to the state of water, I need to come with another apology. I'm presenting here the results of the second River Basin Management Plan, because we have not yet been able to release the results of the third River Basin Management Plans. What I can say, though, is that the results of the second and third River Basin Management Plans are quite similar. Not much has changed in the previous 6 years. So if we look at the distribution of ecological status across Europe, the areas on the map that are red, they are the areas where more than 50% of Europe's water bodies are not achieving good ecological status. You can see from that there's a large part of Europe in which the ecological status is not good. If we also look at water scarcity in Europe, this is not part of the river basin management plans, but a calculation we do at the European Environment Agency. Around 30% of the population are experiencing water scarcity. A lot of these people live in Southern Europe, but actually, as you can also see from the map, in the summer, many areas across Europe are facing water scarcity, even in Finland. So not just a Southern European phenomena at this stage. And when you live with water scarcity, this is something you feel. You will be facing different kinds of restrictions on your ability to use water. Now, the reasons for this, which we also know from the reporting under the Water Framework Directive, the primary reasons are linked to diffuse pollution and hydromorphology. We also have atmospheric pollution of especially mercury that creates a large pressure on water. We have water abstraction in groundwater, and we have point source pollution. But as you can see, around a third of these pressures, depending on which one, the largest pressures impact around a third of the water bodies in Europe, and several water bodies can be subject to more than one pressure. And linked to climate change, we also see a higher frequency of regional disasters. Last year, or a couple of years ago, we had a situation on the Oder River. This would be the river between Germany and Poland, where it was in the summer, there was drought, high temperatures, and upstream in the catchment, a mining facility continued to release large quantities of high saline water. And within the period of a week, this had given rise to a toxic algae that basically wiped out all life in the river. This is a river that's 600 kilometers long. And as you can imagine, this had a very large impact of everyone living along the river. And of course, also the protected areas, the nature protected areas that are also in that catchment. Every year we have floods. Many of you have probably heard the news from Germany over the weekend. There are now very large floods in Germany. And this is a picture from last year from Slovenian floods. My colleagues who recently published the European Climate Risk Assessment has calculated that in 2022, 52 billion euros were lost due to weather and climate extremes in Europe. So these events are costly. They not only impact our lives, they're also extremely costly. I just want to give you an example here from my own country, from Denmark, where we now every year have a situation where a combination of pollution and higher temperatures are expanding the area of oxygen depletion in the Danish waters, and this has very serious implications. We're now discussing whether it's even possible to catch fish. So very large impact. However, I do like to say that there is hope for us. And when pressures are reduced, our environment improves. And this is an example of one of the success stories where today we have around 20,000 urban wastewater treatment plants in Europe. And because we have increased urban wastewater treatment a lot over the past 30 years, this has also improved the water quality parameters that respond that have the strongest link to urban wastewater treatment. So this is very good news. It does make a difference that we do something. But unfortunately, many of the issues we're struggling with are challenging, extremely challenging to do something about. We have diffuse pollution from many different sources. We have very high intensity of our land and sea use. We have overexploitation of water and also fisheries. And in some places, invasive alien species are a very large problem. So, and these are all issues that are extremely difficult to tackle and require a large-scale effort. All of this is what we talk about in our forthcoming report on the state of water. We've called it State of Water, the Need for a More Water Resilient Europe. This product is a combination of two things. So it's a report, an assessment that you can read, and then it's a presentation, a data presentation in our website called Wise Freshwater. I'm sure that some of you in the room have been invited to a presentation of our many data products that we present. So what we've strived to do is to have a combination of presentation of high-level results in an easily understandable way, providing a European overview, but then also linking these presentations to a large collection of dashboards. I think we have more than 100 dashboards that show all of the different results that all of you have been contributing with as part of the reporting under the WFD. I do know that Ireland is not yet in the system, but once you report, you will also be represented in these presentations if you choose to use the electronic reporting. But to also go a little bit into what it is we need to do to achieve a better environment, it's absolutely clear that healthy ecosystems are part of solving the climate crisis. We all know that seagrass beds and wetlands, they act as natural buffers against climate change, absorbing and storing vast amounts of carbon dioxide. In Ireland, you have a lot of peat, and I'm sure that you are actively working towards having to increase the CO2 absorption of these areas. Also, because water scarcity is such a widespread issue, there's really a need to increasingly be thinking about our water efficiency. If we look at the sectors using water, we're talking about water used for cooling water in the electricity production, for agriculture, for manufacturing, and public water supply. And what we see is that the cooling water has decreased over time, and so has the manufacturing use, but the water used in agriculture and in public water supply is either staying at the same level or maybe even increasing. And this is important because the more water is also used in this production in the areas that are the most subject to water scarcity. And this means that there is an increased focus. There needs to be an increased focus on reducing demand in agriculture, in the energy production, and in the public sectors. This means talking about implementation of drought-resistant crops, improving the cooling water techniques, or, for example, reusing treated wastewater. All of this is needed to adapt and to secure enough water for the environment, because very often the environment is the last user of water to be thought about. As you can see, the need for environment is not for water in the environment is not even included in this chart. So moving forward, we need to think much more about establishing protected areas to increasingly protect nature, but we also need to restore our terrestrial freshwater and marine ecosystems. We need to adapt our management practices to a situation where we're in a position to handle perhaps rapid and very large-scale change. And we need to focus on reducing our resource use and improving efficiency and increasing our circularity. When we talk about restoration need, we have a target in the biodiversity strategy towards more free-flowing rivers, which is about restoring the longitudinal and lateral connectivity of rivers. So basically removing barriers and increasing the ability for fish to move upstream in rivers. Also in the wastewater treatment sector, and especially with the new Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, there's an increased focus on improving circularity of wastewater. And what this means is shifting the focus from wastewater as waste to actually a resource, and looking at how we can recover the resources that are in this waste stream. So recovery of fertilizers, of energy and heat, and recovery of water that can, for example, be used for irrigation. This is captured in the recast Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, together with solutions towards management of stormwater overflows, improved nutrient standards and emission standards for micropollutants. And also there's a focus in the directive on the very largest plants to start with, because this is where you get the largest benefits of these solutions. But I think it's important to also add to this that you don't necessarily need to focus on large and expensive infrastructure. You can also have effective sewage treatment through local and decentralized facilities, and nature-based solutions are important for providing benefits, especially in the context of green space and flood risk management. So overall, to summarize, the situation that we have at the moment, or this situation we have going forward, is that Europe's water is under significant pressure. And this is really a serious challenge to water security, meaning having enough clean water, both today and especially in the future. And this means that Europe urgently needs to improve its resilience and to ensure much more sustainable freshwater supplies, both for people, but also for the environment. And probably one of the things we need to take to heart is that if we think of water as being part of our food system, our energy system, our mobility system, or the built environment, all of these systems need to come together and reduce their resource use so that we basically have a lower level of resource use, and all of these things come together. And this is also what has been set out in the European Green Deal, with a number of initiatives and strategies that has been done, new legislation that has been adopted, and the underpinning of the existing legislation coming from the nature directives, the water legislation, marine directive, and air quality directive. And even if we still don't have a nature restoration law, we are on the European Green Deal has set us on a path towards more sustainable development that we hope we will be able to maintain in the future. And with this, I would just like to thank you and wish you a very nice day.